Hi and welcome to Eldar Army. This week's miniature, your favourite and mine, is the Dark Reaper. I'm going to talk about him. I'm going to go through the history of the model, Jez Goodwin's imagining of it. I'm also going to go through their impact in 40k. I've had these since I was a kid, so some of these miniatures are pretty old, some of them are less old. But yeah, they are absolutely fantastic miniatures. I really like them, and yeah, this is a video for people who want to use them in 7th. They may have the miniatures, or they may want to just go outside the box a little bit and try to get the best values they can for these guys in 7th edition. I won't lie to you, they've been eclipsed by a lot of more units out there, such as Scat Bikes, Wraith Knights, but they do have a use, and we're going to give them a couple of builds, in fact 3 builds that it can work with. And there's going to be 2 builds and then a bonus build at the end, which is a cheesy build, but quite fun to try with. So, as usual, the first part of this video will be the history of the model. So welcome to the history of the model. When I was a kid, when I was 14, I bought these. These are Dark Reapers. These are the original ones, the first ones that I bought. And I'm going to tell you just how much of an impact these made back in Rogue Trader. In 1991 they released these, and Jez Goodwin designed them, and he had this beautiful picture in his mind of sort of death incarnate carrying a missile launcher. Back then missile launchers were very hard to get. Devastator squads could get them, I think they could take 2, and you had to pay a lot of points for a Devastator squad. This was a squad of purely just missile launchers, and back then they took frag and crack grenades, which was just insane. Okay, so when they came out, they were just insanely good. I've got 3 of them to show you from when I was a kid. I've actually got slightly more than that, but I don't have, the models don't have bases and they don't have legs. For some reason 2 of them have snapped off at the knee and I can't find the feet. So while I do have more of the models, and I do have an Exarch, I don't have the fantastic Web of Skulls, the infamous Web of Skulls, which was, by the way, a pretty useless weapon, that had follow-on fire, if you can remember that. So 1991, the reimagining came out in White Dwarf 124, 127. And yeah, just a fantastic little kind of unit to have in the game, like a Devastator squad without any of the penalty of having to take soldiers with it. The game moved forward, and in 2000, by 3rd edition, they'd been substituted by these guys, still in white metal, but these were what the Dark Reapers looked like in 3rd edition in 2000, and they released I think 3 poses. I'm not sure if I've got all the poses here, but probably not far off. And yeah, what to say about them? They look all right. I think if anything, they're a slight improvement. They look more skeletal, maybe. They don't have the weather vanes coming out of their heads, which always a lot of people had a bone of contention about. I've got 2 Exarchs from that period that I've modded. One here has got a missile launcher, EML, and one has a shuriken cannon. I won't lie to you, the shuriken cannon is kind of like the Web of Skulls of his generation, and why would you take it when you get you know, Starshot missiles? I don't know, but still, you know, some people like it because he gets to shoot another shot, 4 shots. But we'll talk a little bit about the tactics later. I won't lie to you, shuriken cannons are not in my tactics that I'd recommend. So yeah, in 2000 they moved forward to this change here, and then in 2006 they got re-released for the 3rd time, or released for the 3rd time, and this time with the weather vanes back on their heads. And they're a nice attractive model. I think these are probably my favourites of the 3. I think they capture some of the beauty of the first line in terms of their sort of horrifying sort of feeling, but they've also got some of the flamboyance of Eldar as well. They're not just skeletal. So I really like these, I really rate them. The other thing to mention about these is they came, I think there's only 2 poses, and they came with an Exarch. From what I can gather though, from time immemorial, the missile launcher has not changed. If you look at this guy here, which is the latest model, and you compare it to this here, I can't see any discernible differences. That there may be, oh, his hand's at the top. Sorry, I'm wrong, his hand's at the top. But you can see that, and there's a little bit of a pull thing at the bottom, but they're clearly redesigns. I mean, they've used the same model kind of again. So very, very interesting that that's lasted 25 years, that design. So anyway, now we're going to go into the different builds you can take, and first build is build 1. So build 1. My first recommendation for taking these guys, if you're serious about them, is actually taking just 3. They have a very, very interesting weapon, Starshot missile launcher, which basically, I think it's a Star Swarm, isn't it? The Star Swarm missile launcher, by the way, they all have stars, and you know, people think Space Wolves have got the word wolf and everything, but I have to say every single missile combination, and there's loads of them. They take the Starshot, Star Swarm, Star Hawk, Tempest, and then Plasma, and yeah, it's starting to get a bit daft in amount of missiles these guys can fire, including the X-Arc. But if you look at the choices involved in these guys in the codex, you will see a lot of choices. And sometimes that can get really exciting and you can sort of get really involved and go, oh, yes, brilliant. But I think for 75 points, this is not a bad unit for 6 shots. Now, unlike almost everything else in the Eldar Codex, I think Wraith Guard and Wraith Blades, Wraith Lords don't, and Wraith Knights don't have. They don't have battle focus and they don't have fleet. That's important to remember, but they do have slow and purposeful, which means they can't run either, but they can move and shoot, which is quite good. So you can move them in 6 inches and still shoot them in your turn. Now, that they fire 2 shots each, strength 5 AP3, and they do what I think Dark Reapers do best in the Codex. They are probably one of the best pure counter units the Eldar have. They counter pretty much all the strong lists. They counter bikes, jet bikes, and you know, the Space Marine bike lists that are becoming more and more common. They counter skimmers, you know, that can jink. They counter that if you potentially want them to. They counter Necrons very well because they actually effectively force them to go straight to a resurrection roll, which is very interesting. So they don't get that almost dual save that they used to. They're now running around on a 5-up resurrection or maybe a 4-up, but still it turns them into relatively normal things to hit as long as they haven't got cover, etc, etc, etc. And I do think they're very good in squads of 3. In fact, I'd recommend potentially looking at taking 2 squads of 3. Now you're now looking at 150 points, which is not that bad. Now I notice that I haven't gone for the infamous formation, and there's a reason for that. The X-Arcs that you get are actually very pricey. Now they're worth it because they get an extra shot, kind of, but I've just gone out and got 150 points worth of 6 and 12 shots. 150 points for 12 shots of AP3 is not bad. That squad can do all right. You might want to guide it, and I'm not talking about the BS4 as a hazard here. I'm just saying it's a good BS. It's not excellent like BS5 in a formation, and you would take BS5 as your formation. But I do think, you know, I think that's good. That is good for 150 points. That's good as long as it doesn't bleed. You know, being shot back, you've got 48-inch range, and you're careful with it. They can do a lot of damage to Tau battlesuits, to all the things that are sort of armor value 3 that are strong. And they are a counter to a lot of the best metas out there, including Eldar. They're one of the best counters to Eldar bikes in the game that any army has. It's rather strange to say that about them, but they ignore Jink and their AP3, and which means basically whatever Eldar they hit, they're killing on 3s, jet bikes, and they're gone. They can't Jink nothing, and they're very, very good at that role. They also get 2 shots. Now, if you go for Starshot missiles, which are your strength 8 upgrades, they get a lot more expensive quite quickly, and they also lose a shot. So just so you know that you have to be careful with these when you start paying points, because you can heavily invest. I wouldn't look at a transport for them, but we will be talking in build well, no, I'll bring it up here because it doesn't really belong in any of the builds. A lot of people talk about taking a bunker for these guys, which I believe, I don't actually have the rules for bunkers. I don't have that book, but I believe it's AV 13 all round and 3 hull points, and it costs, I think, 50 points for a bunker. Now, I've never used buildings in my games. I never have, but I do think if you really, really want them, then they work well in bunkers, probably better than any unit for what they are, because obviously they don't have any spare ablative wounds, which a lot of even standard Marines, Devastator squads have a few ablative wounds that you can bleed off before you start losing your serious guns. So they are quite vulnerable to losses when people do get close to them. People also say put an escape hatch in, and then you can use slow and purposeful to move quite a long way away. So you could move up to 18 inches away from the bunker and still shoot that turn. Which goes back to what I will say about this build as a counter. I think for jet bikes and bikes, the fact that they have a 2d6 assault after they've shot, you want to have small units as much as possible so that you can place these and create crossfires. So for example, if I put them, I don't know, here, for example, across one side of the board, I might want to try and create a crossfire in such a way that this unit over here is able to create a crossfire as well. So no matter what the bikes do, they're vulnerable from some angles. I mean, I'm not done the video on scat bikes yet, but without going into too much detail, what you try to do with scat bikes is not wipe them out, but try to flick a few casualties off each squad. What you try to do with scat bikes is people might take 4, 5, or even 6 squads of scat bikes, and you want to peel off 1 wound per squad. Now in that way, these aren't actually as good because they're more likely to saturate a huge amount of damage, but they're still not very expensive. 150 points is not insane, and obviously it goes without saying they're good against Marines, they're good against Necrons, they're good against all the town stuff that's you struggle against, and they don't ignore cover, but they ignore jink, and they also have a very interesting effect. Because they can re-roll hits against flyers, even in this form, certainly Dark Eldar, and this is why they're a good counter to Eldar, they're actually fairly effective at taking down AV-10 flyers, because your Dark Eldar and your Eldar flyers especially are quite light, but strength 5 is enough, and you get 12 shots, and you can re-roll misses. They are twin linked against flyers in any flight mode. That means that you have to shoot them at ballistic skill 1. So if you are snap shooting at a flyer because it's flying, it lists the modes. It says glide, hover, I don't know what they are. I mean, you swoop, whatever. But the point is, they're very good against Tyranids because they often come in along with flyers that are quite vulnerable to toughness 5, strength 5 weapons. And they only hit on 6s, but they get to re-roll misses, which is actually quite good. So I'm here going to roll 12 shots, and I'm going to re-roll, which will get me statistically 2 hits, and that's going to get me 3 or 4 hits. Now they can't jink that. So straight away, this could take down a Hive Tyrant quite easily, quite consistently. Now, is it your number 1 choice for anti-air? No, it's definitely not your number 1 choice for anti-air. I would say that honour goes to Crimson Hunters, and also Swooping Hawks are the second choice. But I think as a third choice, if you've got a flyer on 1 hull point left and it's an AV-10, I'm not talking about the Flying Chickens and the AV-12 Imperial stuff, the Vendettas and stuff, that this isn't going to touch them. But interestingly enough, this is good against almost the other type of flyer that you'll get. So pay attention to the power they have. Understand that they do ignore jink, which is a massive thing, to ignore jink and reroll misses. Yeah, they're snap firing, but you haven't invested any bonus points on them. And I think against a dual Hive Tyrant with the Harridans, you know what I mean, the flyers that they get, they start on the board, don't they? Which is a massive advantage if you're Tyranids. And they're quite susceptible because they're relatively high wound creatures, but with relatively low toughness. And they are creatures, so you can smack them down with these kind of weapons, and they are really, really hard for them to do anything about. So, you know, 2 squads means that you can position them separately. You can create crossfires on jet bikes. And yeah, I think, honestly, if I saw this in a list that was carefully put together, 150 points, I'd think, you know what, this guy's not an idiot. So let's go into build 2, which is a variant on this, but we're literally going to almost double the points, which is why I say this is quite good as it is. Build 2, so I'll go into, but before I do, build 1, I would give this, I'm going to give this actually a B minus. I know it's BS4, but you can mitigate that with guide if you need to. I think there's high utility, and I think it's very good at meta, breaking apart metas that you see in the tournaments. I'm going to give this a B minus, which goes to show how highly regarded I think these are. Now, are they used a lot? No, but I would say still 3.5 out of 5 is probably one of the best scores I've given on this channel so far. They are deceptively good. They're very strong in the certain situations that you need to put them in, and they are counters to all the nasty stuff that you really don't want to have to face. And even if I saw 4 squads of these at 300 points, you know, in a carefully laid out board with good board control and a lot of positioning, that creates a lot of crossfires, difficult to hide, and like I say, they ignore jink. So not best in codex type unit, but better than, I mean, one of the things that people say about them is any other codex, they'd be really, really a steal for the points. And I think if you don't upgrade them, you actually start to see that. But yeah, I mean, you could put 2 squads of 2 bunkers for 4 squads, and you've got, you know, I think for 400 points, you've got a really nasty thing that the opponent has to deal with, especially if they're Necrons slugging across the board, things like that. So I do think they're good. I do think probably the best pure counter, meta counter unit, probably available to almost any codex. But equally, they're probably the least aspect in that. Well, and Dire Avenger is actually interesting that they don't really have a role. They counteract roles very well, so they're a good counter-punching unit. Not so much about dictating the pace and dictating the terms of the engagement, but more reacting and punishing. If you can keep these guys down alive in turn 5, they do huge value. If they start getting killed too quickly, then you know you've got to struggle. They're reasonably survivable. I've only used them once myself in 7th edition. They actually survived all game in the ruin in the middle of the board. People have got better things to do than to worry about them. They go on to other things, so they may suffer in a good way from that bias against them, because people think, oh, they're only toughness 3, I'll get them next go, and then they forget that they've done that 3 turns in a row. So yeah, they're all right. They do all right in buildings. So yeah, a good 3.5. So yeah, now time for build 2. So my choice for build 2 is take 3. 3 squads, 1, 2, 3. Exarch, boom, formation, boom, 270 points. Before you've upgraded anything, you've just got 270 points. But what do you get for that 270 points? You get an extra shot from the Exarch special skill. I would keep them as the original Star Swarm missiles, strength 5, AP 3, on 2 of the squads, and play with the idea of upgrading one of the squads, for example this one, to EML and Star Shot. The reason why you do that is the utility that it gives you. A lot of the things that I've said were true about the previous build are true for this. Now you could drop the number of pure aspects here and go say, well, I want to go and get a Fire Dragons aspect warrior group with this. And there's a lot of mileage to doing that, but I'm just going to say that I think this can really punch heavy. If you're up against jet bikes or all the other units that I talked about in the previous codex, you're going to see a theme in that this is a good counter unit, and your enemy will not be expecting it. If you're facing, for example, Khan and his white scars, this is quite a threat, serious threat. Also, this guy here, with an EML, it means that his squad can shoot flyers at AV-12. Now, you're only going to get, the normal Reaper's only going to get 2 shots, and they're going to reroll misses, so probably they're going to miss. You may get lucky and have one hit. You may get 2 hits, but really you should expect them to hit nothing. But his strength 7 shot, which is pretty naff, he gets 2 of, and actually, even AV12, which I think is pretty much the highest you're likely to meet, even AV12 means he's going to hit it. He re-rolls misses. Remember, when we talked about Warwalkers, I said you want to avoid EML on Warwalkers because I don't think it's as good. This actually suddenly is quite good. Now, it's a heavy investment of points. It's 20 points for the EML for him, plus 16 for the two here. Okay, so it's a lot more points than just, so you're basically talking 36 points plus this, so it's 306 points now. These guys fire at strength 8, and these two are still strength, still strength 5. But these get 7 shots. These get 7 shots because of their Exarch skill. Don't upgrade him to Shuriken Cannon. That's just because I haven't got the model. And these can take on flyers that are AV12. Now, they're only going to statistically take off 1 hull point. What'll happen is he'll hit it on, he's got a BS of 6 now. So he'll hit it because of his twin linking, because he's still got the Reaper Rangefinder ignored twin linking. So he'll hit on, say, I don't know, unless you roll double 1, he's going to hit. Okay, so he's twin linked for shooting at BS 6. He's not going to miss. Now, you've got to get a 5 now on 2 dice, which can be done. If you get a 5 on 2 dice, statistically that's going to happen a bit more than a third of the time. Actually, sorry, a bit more than half the time. I think it's, point whatever. It doesn't matter, but 56% of the time or something, you're going to roll a 5. That's a hull point. Bang, straight away. If you get 6, it's a pen. You might get immobilized. It's not the best weapon in the world for taking on flyers, but it doesn't stink, and you're going to get, statistically, you're going to get something for it. You might be unlucky, but the next turn you won't be. And now, is it good as your only anti-flyer? No, definitely not. But in a situation where you've reduced that bad boy to 1 hull point, and you've got a choice between using a load of scat bikes or a load of wave serpent blowing the shield just to try and get 6s, and you think, you know what, I wish I had some Exarchs here that can do the damage. So that's what I would say about these guys. I think this formation's good. It's very expensive, but you can create a lot of crossfires. You can get a lot of shooting. Now, some people talk about the Tempest launcher. I'm just going to bring it up. I think the Tempest launcher is a bit of a red herring. I think actually it's a very good weapon, but it's only strength 4. I'd prefer it to be strength 5 because it doesn't matter. It potentially synergizes, but if you're going to barrage something that's out of sight, you're wasting the shots of the other 2. If it's strength 4, you really don't want to upgrade their missile launchers to strength 8. So you're going to have Star Swarm missiles. So that's strength 5. So they're going to miss their shots, or they're going to shoot a strength 5 target, sort of strength 5 / whatever targets. He's 3 heavy 3 blast, 1, 2, 3, because he gets his Exarch bonus. Yes, it's barrage, but his BS 6 doesn't matter unless it's line of sight. So my personal thing is, I know people love it, and I do know people love it, but my feeling is probably avoid. Just because you could go anywhere, you could scatter anywhere, and yeah, you get 3 shots, but with a bit of luck, and he's as good as a guardsman shooting, by the way, because it's barrage. You might plink off something pretty useful at the back line because it's AP3, and AP3 blasts aren't that common, and they're very good against certain types of units like Smurfs and stuff, and so my feeling is could be good, probably avoid, just because it's, and if you do go with it, I would keep the other 2 and try to not fire indirectly so that they can at least join in. Yeah, so I won't talk too much about this, but just to remind you a lot about your positioning. You want to position these guys literally in the corners of the board to create as many crossfire opportunities as possible for people who are pressing you in bikes, so that they can't assault, move away, and laugh in your face while you can't shoot back. So they're good. They get a huge buff with the BS5, but because of the Exarch you have to buy to get it, you do pay for it. You know, it's 90 points for a unit, and you have to do that 3 times, and they're still just strength 5. But you get a heck of a lot of strength. I mean, it's 21 shots. If you just took them as strength 5 AP 3 shooting, 21 shots is not a joke, especially when they're all going to hit on anything but ones. So basically, you're going to be taking Smurfs off the table on 3s unless they've got cover saves. And what it does to Necrons isn't funny either, because they don't like it. Because yes, they get the resurrection, but they don't get their normal save, which is probably 90% of why the resurrection is such a pain, because they've already got a save on top of it. So with cover aside, and obviously cover's always an issue, if you can create crossfires, and I would say your ability to create crossfires and keep these guys out of harm's way will dictate how useful they are to you. So yeah, I think as a aspect formation, you could take this like this, or you could slice it down. I haven't got a problem with someone just taking one squad and taking, say, I don't know, a squad of fire dragons and a squad of warp spiders, or whatever they want to take. But I think there's nothing necessarily bad about taking 9 of these bad boys. You won't see them very often. Enemy won't be expecting it. They can move and shoot. They can create crossfires, and they are an excellent counter to quite a lot of the meta that you will see on, especially, you know, the sort of Death Star kind of setups that people have got in the gaming conventions. I would give this C-. I think it's literally double the points of the other build. You get like 11 more shots, so maybe it's worth it. I don't know. No, sorry, not 9 more shots. So maybe it's worth it. And if you go for the strength 8 stuff, you're starting to pour a lot of money into them, and obviously they're only toughness 3, and you know. So you could say, "Oh, I want to get them in a bunker," and and yeah, you can. But I just think, you know, where are you going with all that points? I think the attractiveness of this is not in the stats. The stats are excellent. I think the risk is that you go a bit sort of spend crazy and just spend too many points in one place. But I do think this formation would work quite well in low points games, which is an interesting thing to say because they have a huge range, and they're also good against bikes. So in 1,000 point tournaments, 300 points doing that, or 270 points doing that, is actually quite canny, and I think could work quite well. It's only a quarter of what you're spending, and it's a lot of DACA for the value that you've got invested in it, and you've still got 700 odd points that you can spend on your list. So you could still have a fairly formed list for 750, or 720, 730, which is what it would be, and take these guys. So, you know, I think in small point games, they could be deceptively good because of the amount of AP3. Anyway, now it's time for the bonus build. So, welcome to the bonus build. And what is the bonus build, I hear you ask, with this giant fortress monstrosity appearing in the screen? Well, for this build to work, you need to have a building in your army list, and you may have heard this on the internet. I didn't make this up, but this is a very astute observation by one clever soul who will probably always remain anonymous because this has been reposted a few times. But in order to use this build, you need to get yourself a dinner plate, a 7-inch wide dinner plate, and what you need to do is just paint it red and just write D-E-A-D on it, and you can place it anywhere you like over your enemy and get your dustpan and brush out and just sweep them up. And you get 2 of these to shoot per turn. And if you think I'm joking with you, I'm not too far off it. This is one of the most powerful things 40k has to offer, and it is now you must take these as an aspect host formation. So he needs to be BS6 for this to be a full value opportunity. So you take these 2, this guy here, the Exarch, and the 2 backing singers that you're not too bothered about whether they live or die, to be honest. And this building is my impression of a plasma obliterator. If you don't know what a plasma obliterator is, look it up. It was built about 4 years ago. It was limited edition building. You can still get them on eBay. They're not cheap, 150 quid. But really, it's just a building with a plasma cannon on. And plasma cannons are not too difficult to mod. So I wouldn't have a problem trying to mod one if I really wanted to use one. I think they're 200 and... I think all in, this still comes in at less than 300 points, but I might be wrong because I'm not actually sure what the points of them are, because the data sheet was part of the model and I don't actually have it. But without knowing the points, which I'm pretty sure you can look up for yourselves, I don't want to quote them wrongly. This build is insane. A plasma obliterator is an AV-14 building, which has a plasma cannon on it, which is strength 7 AP2, and gives a 7-inch blast. The reason why he's good is it's the model and his equipment that gives you these buffs. He increases the number of shots that you fire by 1. So instead of being a plasma obliterator being heavy 1, now a plasma obliterator is heavy 2, and it's not illegal to do. Second of all, the big weakness with these kind of plates is cover. AP2 is fine, but what if he's taking on things with Jink? Well, he ignores Jink. His Reaper rangefinder does it. It's a skill that he has, not his gun. So he can use it on anything he shoots. So the long and the short of it is, he can shoot 2 of these per turn, and anything that's underneath them can't Jink, or won't benefit from cover save from Jinking, which means jet bikes. It would be absolutely insane to take a jet bike list against a unit like a building like that, unless you had some serious tactics on how to take the building down. The other thing about the plasma obliterator is it's still plasma, and it has quite a penalty on gets hot. I think everything in the building has to take a save if the Exarch rolls a 1. But if you take him as part of the formation, he'll be BS6. And one of the weird things about BS6 is you can re-roll. So you can re-roll misses, so you can re-roll 1s. You wouldn't be doing it other than just to throw off the extra 1, but you would make it so that effectively you have to roll double 1 to get gets hot, which is why you should take him as part of a formation, so he's BS6. I won't go any further on this. I think the opportunities that it offers is just insane. A 7-inch blast twice it's just crazy. It's proper crazy what it offers you, and there aren't many people in the game who are going to struggle to see the benefit of that. I mean, it's AP2 strength 7 that big, and he can re-roll gets hots. Now, some people have said that the frequently asked questions will change, that he can re-roll gets hots on BS6. I'm not sure, but at the moment that is the situation. He can re-roll his gets hots. So if he's got BS6, unfortunately he relegates his 2 backing singers to just shooting pot shots out windows, but the same kind of targets. But realistically, this thing's just demonic. I mean, even if you allow it to shoot at you 2 turns, I mean, it can kill half your army. Terminators just dead. Marines are dead. Anything that's biking, that's Jinx, is dead. Orcs with their autocannon bikes are dead. There's so much this does, and it's just horrifically nasty. And I think it's probably one of the biggest exploits in 40k that you can pull off for the points. It's not the cheapest way of going about it, but it's sort of apocalypse kind of level performance from kind of reasonable points. Anyway, so now on to the conclusion. So, in conclusion then, what is there to say about them? I actually have quite a lot of the models, as you can see. I think if we count them, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 of these guys, if I choose to take them. I rarely use them. I've used them once in 7th edition, and I don't even think I used them in 6th, which is a bit sad really, because I didn't try not to use them, I just ended up not using them. So shame on me. I think they're a good unit. I think they can become bloated and expensive, but that shouldn't stop you from taking them. I think if you take them raw, even up to 4 squads, you're still talking 300 points, and I think raw, that is a lot of shots. It's a lot of shots. It's 24 shots, and I just think with the amount of different units there are in 40k at the moment that can create the kind of havoc that they can create, and the builds that are out there, I think these guys can tear it up for the points, and I also think in low points games they can be good. I do think if you took 4 squads of these, 4 squads with no upgrades, no Exarchs, nothing, and you put them on the board against, for 300 points, that's actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good because you can put them in the corners, you can put them on top of buildings. They're small squads. Suddenly the enemy has to really try to get rid of what is affecting our MSU. And you'd be very unlucky not to have 2 or 3 of these squads away, alive at the end of the game. There is a bit of a debate. If you take a small squad, is it whether it's worth to take the launcher? I think for the extra points, you get 15 points. You pay for an extra wound and an extra shot, so it becomes, for Star Swarm missiles, you get sort of heavy 3, and you think, well, okay, so that means the squad gets not 6 but 7 points, but now it's 90 points for the squad instead of 75. Swings and roundabouts. Personally, I think don't bother. Just keep them cheap. Keep them cheap. The extra room's nice, but half the time, what's going to hit him is going to be strength 6 anyway. Although not all the time. People are going to want to make sure, and it's not going to be bolters that's doing it. They're going to be hit at range by long range stuff, and so my feeling is, mathematically, there's not much in it. Probably better to err on the side of not bothering with the Exarch, which is a shame. But I do believe in keep boys before toys, especially with Eldar. They do their job really well without any buffs. So don't think of them as losing strength 8 weapons. Think of it as gaining, an AP3 strength 5 shot from a unit that costs you virtually nothing really. They're also they lack fleet, but they're not immobile. They can actually move and shoot. So use that to their advantage. Put them in a location where they've got a place to go if they're in trouble. If people drop pod, for example, or if that flank gets taken on, give them at least a chance of going somewhere. If you can't, you can't. Or even better still, use them as bait, perhaps. They're also, because they end up sitting in the corners, they can often do quite well helping you get objectives and stuff, because, to be honest, at the end of the game, you're like, who's even deployed in that half of the board? Against like Grey Knights and stuff, they can be quite good. So, because they can move. So, and do their job. So, overall, a good unit. I think in any other codex there'd be an auto take. I think the Exarch's options are massive. I mean, there's so many that it's almost insane. Starshot, Starhawk, Star Swarm, Tempest, Plasma. That he's got a lot of different types of shot. Plus, he can take a shuriken cannon. He can go in emplacements and do the dirty on them by giving them a +1 on the number of shots. I think, and the Ignore Jink, I think he's good in an Icarus cannon, for example. So I do think that they've got huge potential. There are a smorgasbord of choices. Probably most of them are a bit over the top. Always think, really, what job do I want them to do? And try to tailor them to that job. The temptation is to say, I'll make them all strength 8 missiles and I'll take, 9 of them and da. And it's just, so what? Against some lists, that's just going to be absolutely devastating, and it could be. But it's going to cost you a fortune. I mean, what points is that? It's 90 plus 8 3 times. So 24, so 214. So it's 342 points to just, to take 9 guys with, 4 shots each, and you think, well, strength 8, but maybe if you're facing a load of Rhino rushing whatever, or a load of, strength 8 can be good. So, well, it is good. So, I mean, I don't know. It's up to you. I just think, try to resist the temptation, and this is my personal choice here, to splurge points on them, because quite quickly they can see points going down the drain, because they do die like Eldar. They're only Eldar to shoot at. 48 inches is not amazing. There are most armies have got something that can shoot that far. For Eldar, it's good. And against things like Eldar, they are probably a very good counter. So I think, yeah, overall they're a counter unit. I think they're great for mixing it up with the metas in your local tournaments. You know, if you expect to see the same old, mix it up. They're a great thing for knocking the teeth out of someone who takes 6 squads of jet bikes. And I just think, yeah, I think they're a good, solid 40k unit that in any of the codex would be an auto take. In Eldar, they're relegated to sort of Division 2, which is a shame. But anyway, thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe to this video if you want me to do more. In the comments, if you want to look at what's coming next. I think next, I was going to do Shining Spears, but I think I changed it to Banshees. Just because I don't know what to... I'm terrified of doing Shining Spears. If anybody knows good tactics for Shining Spears, please share them with me, because I have actually used Shining Spears, and I've put quite a lot of hope value in them, because I looked at them and I thought on paper they don't look that bad. But anyway, let's just skip what I'm going to say there and save it. I will do a Shining Spears video eventually. I want them so badly to be good, but I don't think I'm the man who can make them work. The only other thing I would say is, yeah, like and subscribe, and please ask for what you want next. I think we'll be looking at Banshees next time. Thank you very much.